Hi everyone and welcome to Badminton Lights Out, a feature of the Badminton podcast.
Where we take you behind the scenes of high performance badminton.
I'm Gronya.
And I'm Justine. Welcome to the pod.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about how to qualify for the Olympics and the general tournament structure in helping you qualify.
Yeah, so pretty much the qualification starts from 2 to 1.5 years and even longer for the development. So we should start and get right into it because this could be a very long topic. Yes. So, Gronya, how do you qualify for the Olympics? What makes the Olympics different from World Champs? Like, what's so special about it?
Pretty much for the Olympics, there is a specific qualification period. So this is usually about 1 year. The Olympics being typically the end of July, start of August. So this usually runs from about April the year before to April, end of April, start of May of the year of the Olympics. So it's officially 1 year. But why we say that Olympic qualification kind of starts 2 to 1.5 years earlier is that you want to have enough points to then qualify for the correct tournaments during that official qualification year. So if you're starting from zero in that year of trying to qualify for the Olympics, it just means you're at a disadvantage because if you have like no ranking, then you have to play all the qualification tournaments in the very small tournaments and your points are reduced.
Now, just a quick word from our sponsors.
The Badminton podcast is brought to you by Volant. Volant was first born out of our frustration with the confusing, bright and unsightly clothes and equipment that we saw in the badminton world. But now it's so much more than that. Our mission is to accelerate the growth of badminton by providing players with products that enhance their love for the sport. All in all, it's high quality gear that makes you look and feel great on and off the court. So make sure you check us out at volantbadminton.com and follow us on our socials at Volant Badminton.
Well, you mentioned points now, right? So let's start with points. Like, how do you start building up? Building up points? So, you know how, let's say you're a fresh pair, you have 0 points whatsoever. Where do you start?
So if you, as a pair, you have no points, then if you have ranking with other partners, there's something called notional points, which means if you have points with a different partner, you can kind of add your points together to get you a notional ranking, which can get you into tournaments. So there's different calculations that Badminton World Federation use for this. But otherwise, if you're both starting from zero, haven't played any international tournaments, then yeah, you literally just start from zero and you have to start at the very bottom of the tournament hierarchy, I guess.
Yeah. Like, imagine if your first tournament was a super series, how good would that be? Oh, they're not actually, are they still called super series?
It's called like Super 500.
Super 1000?
That kind of thing.
Yeah, well, we could go into that. So what is the hierarchy? So what is the lowest tier all the way up to the World Tour Finals or the Super 1000?
You need to learn these, Jazzy.
Yeah, I do.
So the lowest is called Future Series. Then it goes to International Series, International Challenge, Super 100, Super 300, Super 500, Super 750, Super 1000, and then above that there is, I think, just World Champs and the Olympics.
So why is it that like someone who doesn't have any points can't go straight into a Super 500 or a tournament like that?
Well, ultimately they can only accept so many competitors. So it's based on the order of how high your world ranking is. So if they I think from the Super 300 upwards, there's no qualification, which means they can only accept 32 entries within each event. So if you're not ranked, like you're competing against other people to be ranked to get within that 32 participant range, really.
Yeah. So, and do you remember how many points you can earn from a future series, an international series like that? Because I know that once it gets into the supers, winning one round in one of the supers could be equivalent to winning a future series. Is that right?
Yeah. So from memory, International Challenge winner gets 4,000 points And I think like first round loss in a Super 750 might get you about 3,200 points.
Wow.
Something like that. So there is a points grid that is up on like Wikipedia or BWF that shows it breakdown. So that's why you like need to consider as a player which tournaments you're going to play, which is going to be worth your while. If it's better to, you know, in a bad way, kind of like lose first round in a big tournament, or, you know, play many rounds and try and win a smaller tournament.
Yeah. And how does it get calculated? So does it get averaged within 10 of your best results, or do they just like tally it up?
Yeah. So it's the total of your best 10 tournaments is your world ranking. So that means pretty much like the more tournaments you play, the better chance you have of getting good results, and hopefully the higher amount of points you have within those 10 tournaments. Because if you just play 10 tournaments, you know, typically you might have like a few bad tournaments, or you play, you know, the number one seeds first round, that kind of thing. So it's advantageous to play more tournaments in a way if you can try and get a better result.
And what about during your qualification period for the Olympics? How many tournaments did you end up playing to qualify?
Oof, I think it was something around like 23 to 24 in the year.
In 1 year?
Yeah, which is pretty high, but some people were, I think, close to like 29 or 30 as well. I know there were some like Thai players who had done like 8 tournaments in a row. This was before 2021 when half the tour was doing 8 tournaments in a row.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I was actually just looking at the world rankings earlier today, and because they haven't like renewed the world ranking, like they're still including the 2019 world rankings, they haven't reset it to typically where it's just only goes over 1 year. So it's saying people have played like 40 tournaments and like 39. So it's funny seeing that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see when they do reset the world rankings.
Yeah. And for those who are wanting to, you know, start in the lower tournaments to start building up their rankings, where's a good place to start competing? Would you recommend any certain countries or place?
Well, I guess those that are starting out are kind of more playing kind of for experience in a way. So it makes sense to try and just start local and, you know, play your local tournaments, play your national tournaments, and then, you know, try and go to an international in a nearby country, and where it's a bit easier to travel, less expensive. But if you're going like purely for points, then typically less desirable countries to go to will have often easier like competition, I guess, in a way. So that might be African countries, or some pretty much lower socioeconomic countries throughout Asia, or ones that are hard to get to in South America, that kind of thing. But it's really kind of depends on the tournament calendar, because some weeks there might be, you know, like 5 tournaments on, and a bunch of players will be going to stronger tournaments. So there might be one that's a bit weaker, and you might get a good opportunity. Or I think, you know, like the Maldives has typically been a bit weaker because it's so expensive to travel there, and accommodation is expensive. All these different factors come into play. So sometimes it's really just hit and miss about how strong a tournament will be, and you can get, you know, the like second best Japanese team sending like all their players to a random tournament, and it can just be bad luck as well.
Yeah, you mentioned something about being expensive, so it's definitely smart to do some forward planning, right? Because what if you go to a good tournament in terms of like lower competition, but then it'll cost you like 10 grand to get there, and then to the next tournament it'll cost you 2 grand, as opposed to like being in a certain continent where it will have like 4 or 5 tournaments 5 weeks in a row. So that's feasible as well, right? But in those situations, do you gamble that you're gonna qualify for the tournaments, or is there a place that you can check your points?
Yeah, so like the world ranking list through BWF will have your points listed if you have any, and then that you can do some things like the entry deadlines for tournaments vary on how strong they are sometimes. So like the Super 1000s will have a further out entry deadline than like an international series. So within the rules, you can enter a bigger tournament, and if you don't make the M&Q report, so the main or qualifying list, then you can withdraw from that and re-enter a tournament in the same week whose entry deadline hasn't closed yet. So that's something that we might be doing for like a future tournament in March in Europe, because we might not qualify in my new partnership for this Super 300. So we might enter international series in the same week if we don't qualify.
So like with you, because you now have new partners, right? Or do you have to start from the beginning, or is there like a way where you don't have to start from like 0-0?
So with my new partnership, my new mixed partner, he doesn't have any points whatsoever. So he hasn't played an international tournament in years, I don't think. Maybe, yeah, I don't even know when. so we're just, all our points are based off my mixed doubles points, which is, you know, half of what we could potentially have if he had played tournaments. So yeah, we're at a big disadvantage, but it's better than nothing. And I think you're in a bit of a similar position with your mixed doubles, right? Having only played one tournament.
Yeah, it was almost better as if like we didn't play, because then my old partner and his partner, our notional points would have been so much better than like the one tournament. Thank you, COVID.
Yeah,
but nah.
So that's one of the bad things that can happen when you're starting off a new partnership. If the timing is bad and you get like a poor result in the first one or two tournaments, then it can really set you back in the next ones. But like conversely, you can get good results in the first two, and then you have like a high notional going forward.
Yeah, but good thing about it is we'll be competing in the same tournaments, hopefully, right?
Yeah, we're looking.
So we finally get to see each other.
Yeah, hopefully. Fingers crossed the world doesn't explode by then. So right. How did you go about picking your tournaments now that you're getting back on the circuit after like 2 years of no competitions?
I know, 2 years, 1 year injury, 1 year COVID. That's wild. But like, not that I got COVID, it was because the tournaments got canceled through COVID. How I decided was pretty much, we had a really good experience in Europe while we were there. So, and also because of our coach, she is also from Denmark, so she has some good connections in terms of like, you know, keeping things at a low cost. And also Europe had a few tournaments lined up after each other, which made it really easy for us to decide to go there. So in March, there'll be like, was it 3 or 4 tournaments after each other? And it's a future series, international series, and international challenge. So yeah, that's how we decided, because I checked, you actually gave me this tip where we checked the previous year's results or to our entries on to base our points whether we could qualify for that. And for some reason, the early part of the year seems to be weaker than the end part of the year. So it's a good time to start. So that's how we decided. We're like, you know, we just get points as much as we can, or honestly the hardest part is probably just to start. So just getting in there in March gives us like 2 months after the Christmas break to get rid of Christmas habits.
Yeah, a big thing for us coming from, you know, isolated countries down in Australia and New Zealand is that when we're going to travel all the way to Europe, we want to try and bank a few tournaments in a row, or, you know, stay there for a decent amount of time to make it worthwhile, instead of flying back and forth often because it's so expensive, it's so far to go. Yeah. So hopefully we'll get enough points from there. Hopefully we'll qualify, or hopefully it doesn't get canceled. There's so many things to be hopeful for, but you know, it's out of our control. So yeah, we'll just see how it goes. And it's so annoying how we have to wait for like government announcements to see whether we can come back or things like that, because New Zealand's really strict regarding our quarantine. But yeah, back to the Olympics. Unless you have something to say. So you've been based in Denmark for a month or two previously before. And this is quite a common thing for quite a few players to do, especially in Denmark. Would you consider doing it more seriously, or?
For sure. Yeah, it's really because it's so convenient in terms of just location, because also they have really good sparring, like everywhere in Europe. It's quite decent sparring. Meanwhile, when we're here in New Zealand, or, you know, anywhere in Oceania, you pretty much just spar with the same people, because like you said, we're very isolated. So it's really hard to get different, you know, players to spar with. And within Europe, you'd like travel just 1 hour and you're already in a different country. When we're in New Zealand, I would have to travel for 7 hours to just get out of the country, or like get to Asia, or 3 hours minimum to get to you. So yeah. And also there's not many international opportunities in Oceania. So Europe was really easy. And yeah, it was cool. What about you? I know you would recommend it for sure.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of athletes do. So even though those within other European countries often go and train in Denmark, there's quite a few at like Peter Gade's Academy that is quite well known for producing good singles players. And then there's also the European Center of Excellence, or COE, in Holbæk in Denmark as well. So there are quite a few players that have been to the Olympics or are, trying to qualify, that base themselves over there. Sometimes, they might go home for a few months, or outside of Olympic timings, they'll train more at their national center, but then go and have, those long training camps and stuff throughout the year there.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised like how many different countries actually base themselves in Denmark. So when you meet new players, when they go back to their home country, you then have like more networking and you can spar with more people. So it's pretty cool. It's like a hub.
Yeah. And this isn't as common in Asia because I guess the power and control that the national organizations in those places have is quite strong, so they don't allow their players much freedom and flexibility. I think maybe Malaysia probably has the most independent players currently, who have to fully support themselves and find their own training. But in Europe, if you choose to train somewhere else, sometimes your federation will still support you, and understand that you're just trying to better yourself as an athlete, and it's in the best interest for their results as well.
Yeah, and I think because like badminton also is not so big in Europe, that it feels like a smaller community, while in when you go to Asia, badminton players are like superstars. So it's like harder for people to mingle, I guess, within the associations, unless you obviously have networking. So that's probably why Europe seems to be more approachable. All right, and so we're going back to the Olympics, right? You mentioned that it has actually no, we mentioned above super 750 or super 300 there's no qualifications. In Olympics, how do they select who gets to go into the draw? Because it's not about your ranking anymore, right? Because only how many players in each country can play? Do you know?
So they have a rule that within the top 8 in doubles, 2 pairs can go from the same country. And I think in singles, it's 2 singles players from the same country. If they're both in the top 16 can go. So yeah, very limited in regards to, some countries like China, Indonesia, who have like multiple top players in multiple events. So they really battle it out.
Yeah, it gets really competitive within the country. And then meanwhile, like the other countries are like they're grateful to be able to experience like the such high level tournament. Because are there any wildcards?
There's no such thing as wildcards in the Olympics, but there's something called tripartite positions, which I don't know if I fully understand. I think it's like they want to give developing countries a chance to participate, and sometimes maybe the only event that a country might have an athlete in would be badminton, or they're just trying to increase like the number of countries within the Olympics. So I think they maybe give 3 out in Olympics across singles usually. And then there's also continental spots. So that's something that we're very lucky to have in the Oceania region, meaning that if you don't qualify outright through the ranking system, then they'll offer, I think, 2 continental spots to like the Oceania region, to the African region, to the Pan America region, across the 5 events.
Oh, okay. Is it possible to compete in the Olympics with a partner from another country? Or do you have to both be from the same country?
Yeah, so you need to be from the same country, unfortunately. So it's a bit limiting for, certain, if anyone wanted to do that. But the highest level you can compete at with an international partner would be the World Championships.
Who do you know anyone who has won world champs with different countries?
I'm not sure if they won, but I know that Robert Blair and I think Imogen Baker, I think it was, oh, no, was it Scotland and
Quiz.
England? They were like, yeah, they were, I think it was Scotland and England partnership, but they maybe got runner up, or let's just say they won, so I don't insult them. I don't know.
And also in the Olympics, it's quite different to the world champs, right? Because who decides who can go to the Olympics?
So the process is pretty much that, like, once the qualification period is finished, they have all the world rankings and points that everyone has. Then the Olympic Committee will send out an invitation to the BWF, who send it to the association, so like Badminton Australia, who then like will invite the players, and then they accept or decline, and then there's, you know, multiple rounds depending if people decline their spot.
Yeah, New Zealand Olympic Committee has such a strict it has such strict criteria in all of the sports, so it's really important. Like, people don't realize that how many people we have to go through to even go to the Olympics. So yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, so because the invitation goes to like the Olympic Committee, like the Sporting National Olympic Committee, and, you know, Badminton New Zealand, they can have their own criteria, which it can be stricter than, you know, what the Olympic Committee have. So for New Zealand, you have to be like top 16 for them to send you. Yeah, which is very crazy. I think the Netherlands also have quite a strict criteria as well, which meant that them men's doubles wasn't able to send maybe. And then like the last Olympics, we saw that I think it was Badminton England chose a lower ranked men's doubles over the ones that like had the ranking position to actually qualify. So there can be a lot of politics involved, and it's not just like the player gets the invitation because they've earned it. There's no guarantee, and it's a bit messy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And how many in terms of countries, like, because there's such a limit to how many players they can send in a country per country. How many was it the max again? And how, like, where in the top rankings do you have to be able to send more than one?
So in badminton, in the doubles, you had to be top 8 to send 2 pairs. And in the singles, they both had to be top 16 to send 2 singles players from the same country. Like, conversely, world championships, I don't think there's a limit on how many from each country. Like, it just goes through world ranking, I think.
And it's very specific what tournament. Is there like specific tournaments that counts towards the Olympics, or is it just within the date period?
It's just within the date period. Yeah. So there will be some that don't count. For example, I think some things like maybe like Asian Games or the Commonwealth Games, because I think the reasoning is it's not open to everyone. So it's only open to certain countries. So not everyone has the ability to score points there. So those kind of things wouldn't count.
But in saying that, things like continental championships should count, right? Because every continent should have a continental championship. Like, for example,
championships count. Team events count. So team events is you get points based on the average of what the points you already have. So that's usually pretty good points if you already have a ranking, because you're guaranteed your average. Yeah, but it's going to be a bit like, because we don't know if our Oceania championships will go ahead, and that's usually really good points for us, because for us it's treated as an international challenge, and we obviously have kind of less competition. So yeah, I don't know with the pandemic what will happen with different points.
And that leads us to like back to one of our first points, where it takes us so many years to build up just for the qualification period. Because what if you don't have good points from the beginning, and it's harder to get into bigger draws, which means you have to travel to more tournaments, which is just so inefficient and money and time consuming. So that is why it takes so long to build up for the Olympics. And also peak periods. There's like so many factors.
Pretty much you need to dedicate like the whole year to travel and have a lot of money saved up or some good sponsors behind you to qualify for Olympics, because you know, by the time some people get to the Olympics, they're so drained from the qualification period that they can't really enjoy it because it's really grueling. Like it's intense. It's like the pressure, the back-to-back tournaments, travel. It's not easy.
Some people would even say that like the qualification was a lot harder than playing the Olympics and stuff, right? Like that would, especially if their goal is just like make it in.
Yeah.
But because did you ever hear about like Carolina? She had to meet certain things. They had such specific goals, and then she knew that she had to make this placing in a certain tournament to give her a chance to win the Olympics, to make the gold medal. That was crazy. And one of the podcasts that I think HK did with her coach was really, really intense. You should listen to it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I listened to it, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, they were saying that like if you don't make it into, I think, a semifinal or win a certain level, then there was almost no chance for you to win gold in the Olympics. So, I mean, there was obviously like the occasional
points, or in terms of like her
performance
with
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's like an indicator of if she will medal. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so that's why it takes so long to qualify for the Olympics. This is money, time, and points. And partnerships. People underestimate the commitment.
Yeah, and like there's also the pressure of, you know, within partnerships, you know, sometimes one partner, you know, will quit after the Olympics. So it's kind of weird going into the Olympics, wanting to give it your all, and then knowing that you don't have a future afterwards, or by the end of, you know, traveling for a whole year together, you hate each other, or one of you has money, one of you don't. There's like so many different dynamics in doubles partnership that can really be put under pressure in the Olympic qualification process.
Yeah, man, maybe we should just play singles, Gron.
We keep doing these chats and all the signs are pointing towards us playing singles.
Like, what are the benefits of doubles apart from not feeling lonely on court?
Yeah.
I think that's it. Is there anything else you want to talk about regarding the Olympics, or in terms of qualifying for the Olympics?
Probably just that if anyone's thinking of trying to qualify, they need to start now, because even though it's like now it's 1.5 years, no,
it's 2.
2.5 years away. Yeah, you really need to start getting the points up. And if anyone has any questions, they can send them through, because we might have not covered things that you guys are interested in.
Yeah, and it's such a big topic as well. So like there's so many patches that we can go straight into. So these are pretty much like a kind of a general thing, semi-specific.
An introduction to it.
We mentioned something about singles, like life would be easier if we were singles players. But in saying that, the barrier of entry for singles is ridiculously high and hard. But that's another topic we can talk about. Life, the problems of a singles player. So yeah, should we wrap this up for everyone?
Yes.
Thank you for listening to Badminton Lights Out by the Badminton Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it.
Don't forget to like, comment, and share this episode, available on all platforms. Follow us on Instagram. The handle is @the Badminton Podcast, no spaces, and Badminton Lights Out, no spaces.
Stay tuned for our next episode.